I really want like 10,000 more papers on the human factors impact of programming languages. I mean, look, this impacts more than $300 billion a year in wages in the US alone. It's a huge deal. For students, it's a monstrosity. And then in K through 12 computer science, think about this. Right now, we've got these things like computer science principles, right? Which I think is generally actually a pretty well thought through standard. However, because there's no language attached to it and computer scientists cannot seem to agree that 4 is a bad word choice, haven't 30 or 40 years, we're in this weird situation where you might go to one school, you're learning a notation about programming. The school right over uses one different. And the problem is that's absurd. I mean, like in math, we don't do that. If you have an integral, we use the integral symbol. I mean, there are alternative notations. If you want to use the plus symbol in math, everybody agrees what the freaking plus symbol means. But in computer science, we don't. Not even the plus do people agree on what that means. In C++, it means something different in Java, and that's stupid. We need to get rid of that. So like, in my magic wand waving way, what I want a lot more human factors research on that, because I think if we can sort a lot of that stuff out and rule out a lot of these bad decisions that language designers have made, we can start to construct products that are based on sound evidence and then get them adopted slowly over time, get rid of some of these languages like Perl that aren't very well constructed in terms of their human factors impact, slowly let them die and let languages that are using evidence that are slowly making improvements over time, let those slowly get adopted. That's one reason why on Quorum we focus on adoption as well. That's why when we first started, we had 4 kids. And then now it's like more than 80,000. I don't want it to grow too fast. And I don't want it to be the only option out there because Quorum still has a lot of areas where we need more data, to say the least. Especially right now, we're redoing all our compiler error messages because there's good, strong data we need to. But in any case, I think that would probably make a big difference because this language wars problem has been systemic, huge problems for our discipline, and we don't really talk about it that much. We just kind of accept that it's this big, nasty mess.
Yeah, and in the K-12, in particular in the younger grade levels, it is based more on how shiny it looks and the marketing that's behind it rather than the evidence that supports the learning, hopefully, that's involved with whatever platform is being used or language.
It really is, right? Like, I mean, to a certain extent, we all want students to be engaged. And so like, I'm all for like making little animations and doing this kind of stuff. That's all good. I get it. I mean, like, I don't want to just have kids use a console. That's pretty damn boring. But on the other hand, too, like, the data does matter. And even if like that stuff is shiny, the fact that there's a bazillion different products and kids are all learning different things, you'd think that, like, I don't know, in my magical dream world, which, maybe in like 10 lifetimes from now, what I would really like to see is that there's one standardized syntax for languages that is like a bare minimum. And then any language that out there, and it's super evidence-based, there's hardcore data, people have tried to refute the evidence countless times, blah, blah, blah. And then any language that exists, they can innovate on top of that standard, but they use that standard for basic things like looping. Like everybody uses repeat 10 times because it just makes damn common sense, right? And then the standard libraries are all built on the common part, not the experimental part, thereby making it so we can get to closer standards over time, over like a 50-year century, so that maybe we can get rid of some of these problems before the next 3 or 4 generations go by. Because like the problem is, if we don't do anything, kids 3 generations from now are going to have the same damn problem for the same reason. It's just not right. It's going to screw up generations of kids if we don't fix it. So I don't know, maybe I'm being pedantic, but that's my view.
No, I like it. I mean, in general, I like multi-perspectival approaches with most things in life, but we need to have those perspectives built off of some kind of valid research that supports the claims that are typically marketed out with it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and in other disciplines too, to my brain, it feels like there's sort of a core and then there's an experimental part where we tweak. Like, for example, generally in schools, teachers aren't going to change the meaning of the plus symbol, right? Because like that's just part of our standard. We accept that that symbol means one thing, or at least in K through 12 setting. If you want to make some innovative mathematics, you can use your own crazy symbols. But if that becomes standard where everybody's learning about it, then the textbooks try to get some kind of normal notation for it. And we try to kind of boil it down so everybody's doing it. We need that in computer science too. Like if we're talking about looping, we should try to like use the same symbols and terminology so that any kid, no matter what school they're at, can start to like, communicate with each other. It just feels like it'll help society, Like, I mean, think about this. I don't have any evidence of this, but I wonder if you were to take the number of hours work from building the standard libraries that do the same thing in every programming language that exists, lists, arrays, games, all this kind of stuff. How much money have we blown down the drain by rebuilding the same sort of library? I mean, it's got to be one of the most massive duplications of effort in human history to do that. And like, we don't talk about that in computer science. We're just like, try Python, it's great. Whatever language you want to pick.
And the irony of that in relation to CS in particular is not lost on me, in the fact that it's like, oh, why don't I just find somebody else's code that will do this, automate this thing that make my life a whole lot easier.
Exactly. I've been there too. Absolutely. It's just the nature of the beast sometimes, right? Because we still live in the society we live in. I mean, like, we can't change it immediately.
This excerpt was from episode 27 of the CSK8 podcast, and it was titled Accessible CS Education Through Evidence-Based Programming Languages with Andreas Stefik. You can listen to this full interview as well as hundreds more by searching for the CSK8 podcast on your favorite podcast app or by simply going to jaredoleary.com.